foreign widow steps over a border with no savings, no safety, and a single promise to an older woman who has run out of tears. A local landowner will make one decision that pulls two families out of the ditch and without fanfare points toward a king. That is the scale of this story. Small choices with long echoes. You do not need miracles to see God move here. You need courage, clean motives, and public actions that hold up under daylight. Let me set the tension. Naomi returns to Bethlehem empty. Ruth, a Moabite, an outsider from a rival nation, stands beside her with nothing but loyalty. Harvest has started, which means workers in fields open gates and laws about leaving edges of grain for the poor and the foreigner a built-in safety net. Their entire plan is simple. Survive one day at a time with dignity. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Ruth Boaz 22 short. That one line is a clock on the wall. It tells you the season, the public setting, and the window in which God will work through ordinary structure, not spectacle. Now bring this to a Monday. Picture a young woman who just arrived in a new city with her mother-in-law after a stack of losses. She opens a cheap notebook and writes 3 items. Find legal work. Stay safe. Send help to the woman who raised my husband. She circles a date for a local job fair and a food pantry schedule. She is not waiting for luck. She is walking into the open doors that good laws and kind neighbors create. If you have ever started from zero, you know the quiet fear under this kind of plan. The math never looks friendly. You go anyway. Here is the question that sits under the whole book. If God's hand is invisible, do ordinary choices still matter? The answer of Ruth is yes, and not just yes, but yes in ways that reshape names, property, and futures. Ruth will take initiative inside the law. Boaz will practice protection, not just politeness. Naomi will move from bitter to blessed, because the community speaks life and backs it with action. Each step looks small when you take it. Each step adds weight when the town gathers to watch and witness. You will hear about a threshing floor later. You will hear about a city gate and a sandal. These are not props. They are places where character meets public record. That matters, because faith that hides never lifts anyone. The Bible gives you one sentence of scripture per moment to peg the meaning. The rest is plain life lived with care. That is how grace goes local. Reflection. When your plan is one day at a time, what is the next small public step you can take that protects someone else as well as you? The book opens with a family that runs from hunger and runs into graves. Elimelech takes Naomi and their sons from Bethlehem to Moab, because famine empties their table. Moab is close on a map, but far in feeling. Israel and Moab have a rough history, and Moabites were seen as outsiders with suspect loyalties. That matters because Ruth starts life in this story on the wrong side of people's expectations. She marries into an Israelite family, and then death hits 3 times. First the father, then both sons. The house that fled want now has widows and questions. Naomi decides to go home. She hears that food has returned to Judah. She is older. She cannot farm. She cannot fight. She can walk. She tells her daughters-in-law to go back to their families and try for new lives. The logic is cold, and it is honest. There is no safety net for them in Bethlehem. Orpah kisses Naomi and turns back. Ruth does not. She gives a vow that sounds like a legal bond binding promise. Where you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1:16. Short. This is not romance talk. This is covenant talk. Ruth ties her future to Naomi's future and to Naomi's God. Why is that brave? Because crossing a border as a widow and a foreigner is risky. Work is seasonal. Land belongs to clans. Men handle transactions at the city gate. A woman without a husband or father needs advocates. Ruth sees the cost and steps in anyway. Therefore, the road to Bethlehem is both a journey and a verdict. She is choosing a people and a God, not just a zip code. They arrive at the beginning of barley harvest. The town stirs. Old neighbors recognize Naomi and ask if it is really her. Grief changes her posture and her words. She says, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara bitter, because life has turned hard." She is not performing for sympathy. She is telling the truth of her heart. Naming pain is not unbelief. It can be the first step toward healing when it leads you back to God's place and God's people. Bring this to a Monday. Picture a mother-in-law and a young widow landing in your city with 2 bags. They speak enough English to shop, but not enough to argue for a fair wage. One searches community pages for a food bank and ESL class English class for newcomers. The other studies bus routes and the hours of a public clinic. They do not post their pain online. They write to a cousin for a couch. A neighbor notices, meets them at the stop, and draws a quick map. No miracle, just clear choices inside the limits they have. Here is the key turn. Ruth's vow gives Naomi a person. Naomi's return gives Ruth a place. God uses people and place to set a table. The harvest clock is now ticking. Fields will open. Laws about gleaning, collecting leftovers will matter. Reputation will matter. And the line of David is sitting behind the curtain, waiting for 2 women to take the next small step. Reflection. When life narrows your options, which faithful promise can you keep that gives someone else a people and a place? The timing matters. They reach Bethlehem exactly when barley stands tall, and the town wakes early to reap. Barley comes first in spring. Wheat follows after. This means open fields, many workers, and public routines. God has already written care for outsiders into these routines. Landowners must leave the edges and the fallen stalks for the poor, and the foreigner gleaning means collecting what is left. Ruth knows the law in outline. She asks permission to work within it. She is not waiting for luck. She is looking for an honest way to eat. The narrator uses a plain line that carries quiet weight. She happened to come to the field of Boaz. Ruth 2:3 short. It sounds like chance. It reads like guidance. The road did not glow. No voice spoke from the sky. Ruth walked, asked, and bent to pick. The steps are small. The steps are steady. This is how providence, God's careful guidance, often feels. You keep your vow. You move your feet. You find that provision meets you in ordinary places. Let us picture the field. Reapers cut. Others tie sheaves bundles. An overseer tracks progress, watches the gate, and keeps order. A water jar sits where workers can reach it. Edges of the field stay untouched on purpose. Dropped stalks stay on the ground on purpose. These choices cost the landowner a little yield. They protect the weak a lot. Ruth asks to glean behind the reapers. She works from morning with short rests. The overseer notices her steady effort. The system allows it. The community sees it. Dignity grows when effort meets lawful kindness. Do not miss what Ruth brings to this moment. She brings initiative, not entitlement. She asks, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain." Paraphrase of Ruth 2:2. Naomi says, "Go." Ruth goes. She does not know Boaz yet. She does not know how the town will react to a Moabite in their rows. She knows there is a law and a harvest. She trusts that obeying God's way is safer than chasing rumors of quick help. Bring this to a Monday. A newcomer scans community listings and sees a city rule about hiring days for entry-level work. She circles the date. She prepares a simple resume with a friend's help. She arrives early. She introduces herself to the coordinator and asks clear questions. She signs up for the shift no one wants. By evening, she has a supervisor's name, a short trial set for Tuesday, and a bus route plan. No one rolled out a red carpet. Doors opened because laws and people made room, and she walked through them. Here is the point. Providence does not erase planning. Providence invites planning inside God's ways. Ruth stays within the law and finds more than food. She steps into a story where character and community meet her courage. The next scene will bring a landowner who does not just permit the minimum. He will practice protection, dignity, and margin. Reflection. Where on your calendar this week could simple initiative inside a good rule open a door you need? Boaz walks into his field and you can hear the tone at once. He greets his crew with a blessing, not a bark. The workers answer back. Respect moves both ways. An overseer, shift lead, stands nearby to track rows' timing and behavior. Ruth has been working since morning. The overseer points out her steady pace and brief breaks. She asked permission. She stayed in bounds. She has earned notice without making noise. Boaz speaks to Ruth like a father would to a daughter. He does not flirt. He sets guardrails. Do not go to another field. I have charged the young men not to touch you, Ruth. 2, 8 to 9 short. That line matters because harvest time can be unsafe for a woman alone. He gives her access to the water jars set for the crew. He tells her to stay close to his female workers. He frames safety as his responsibility, not her problem. Therefore, Ruth can work without fear. Next, Boaz moves from safety to dignity. He invites her to eat bread, dip it in vinegar, a sour sauce that refreshes in heat, and sit with the reapers. He serves roasted grain himself. Ruth eats until she is full and keeps some back for Naomi. This is not charity that performs for the crowd. This is hospitality that meets hunger and honors worth. He also tells his men to leave extra stalks on purpose. Do not scold her if she gathers among the sheaves. Build margin into the day for someone who has none. Ruth asks why. Why would a man in her new town care this much for a foreign widow? Boaz answers with what he has heard: her loyalty to Naomi, her long walk from Moab, her choice to seek shelter under Israel's God. He names her courage. He prays God's reward on her work. He does not turn her story into debt he can collect. He turns it into praise that lifts her head. This is hesed, steadfast kindness in motion. It is legal, specific, and public. It protects with clear rules. It includes with table space. It provides with extra grain that weighs heavy on the walk home. It raises no rumors because it follows the right order and invites witnesses. The system law overseer field edges sets the floor. Boaz's character raises the ceiling. Bring this to a Monday. Picture a shop owner who hires 2 seasonal workers. Before day 1, she updates the handbook to state zero tolerance for harassment, unwanted conduct that creates a hostile environment. She trains the lead to watch for safety, not just speed. She places the water cooler where everyone reaches it. She schedules lunch so temps sit with full-time staff, not alone in the corner. She tells her team to leave the easy tasks for the new hires to learn quickly and go home with a win. The work gets done. The people get seen. Here is the turn we must not miss. Boaz does not confuse kindness with loosened boundaries. He strengthens boundaries to create room for kindness. Therefore, Ruth thrives. Naomi eats, and the town sees a model they could copy. Character becomes culture when leaders speak plainly and act first. Reflection. If you lead even a small space, a crew, a classroom, a home, what one boundary will you set this week that makes safety and dignity normal for the most vulnerable person there? Ruth rises to glean again. Boaz does more than greet. He instructs his crew to pull out extra from the bundles and leave it for her. He is not lowering standards. He is raising care. Ruth bends, gathers, and keeps pace. When she stops, she has enough to carry with effort. The text gives a number to show weight. By evening, she holds about an ephah of barley, roughly 20 to 30 pounds. He measured out barley and put it on her Ruth, 3:15 short. That is food for days, not hours. Notice the shape of hesed here. Hesed means steadfast kindness inside a covenant-binding commitment. It is not a mood. It is a plan. Boaz keeps Ruth safe. He includes her at the meal. He orders his men to leave margin. He turns blessing into measurable supply. Ruth still works hard. Boaz still runs a real field. The kindness is not a leak in the system. It is a feature of the system because God built edges into his law. Ruth brings the grain home. Naomi sees the pile and hears the story. The change in her voice is clear. Yesterday, she renamed herself bitter. Today she blesses the Lord who has not stopped his kindness to the living and the dead. Naomi also spots something Ruth does not. Boaz is family, a Goel kinsman redeemer, a near relative with the right to rescue property and protect a family line. Information plus kindness creates hope. Why highlight numbers and roles? Because real redemption runs on concrete steps. Food in a sack, a name in a family line, a role in a public process. When faith moves, it leaves receipts you can point to. This guards the poor from empty promises. It also guards the strong from vague guilt. Everyone knows what to do next. Bring this to a Monday. A department lead reviews the budget and adds a margin line that cannot be cut without a second approval. That line funds bus passes for interns, short-term housing for a staff crisis, and weekly meals for new hires who moved across the country. The policy is public. The numbers are tracked. No one is shamed. The team knows why it exists. The lead also assigns a senior to watch the floor and quietly intercept unsafe talk. Work stays efficient. People go home with dignity and groceries. Here is the turn. Politeness keeps you out of conflict. Hesed moves you into responsibility. Therefore, kindness becomes a discipline you can schedule and measure. It turns good intent into carried weight. It also spreads. Workers watch how the boss treats the vulnerable. They copy it the next time someone stumbles in the row. Ruth will soon face a choice that requires bold transparency. For now, the lesson is simple. Build edges, enforce safety, share tables, add weight to a neighbor's bag. Do it in ways that hold up under daylight and under pressure. Reflection. What is one act of kindness you can put on a calendar fund in a budget or write into a policy so that someone's need is met in pounds, not promises? Naomi sees an open door and tells Ruth to walk through it with wisdom. The harvest is almost over. Grain is piled at the threshing floor, a flat public place where workers beat grain loose and guard it at night. Boaz will sleep nearby to protect the pile. Naomi tells Ruth to wash dress go at night and wait until Boaz has eaten and lies down. Then uncover his feet and lie there. This sounds strange to us. In their world, it is a humble, clear request for covering marriage and legal protection. It is not a hidden romance. It is a public setting with workers around. It is a structured way to ask a righteous man to take a righteous role. Ruth answers with simple trust. All that you say, I will do. Ruth 3:5 short. She goes at night to avoid gossip and to protect Boaz from pressure before he can act in daylight with witnesses. She uncovers his feet. He wakes. She asks, spread your garment over your servant. This is a picture word. It means, place me under your protection as Goel kinsman redeemer, a near relative with the right to redeem land and legacy. Ruth is not angling for a private deal. She is asking Boaz to do the right thing the right way. Boaz blesses her courage and calls her a worthy woman, a woman of strong character. But he names a fact that could derail the moment. There is a nearer redeemer. Therefore, Boaz cannot act like the story belongs to his feelings. Law and family order come first. He promises to settle the matter at the gate in the morning. If the nearer man will redeem, he must. If not, Boaz will. Integrity slows desire so that the outcome is clean. Boaz then guards Ruth's reputation. He sends her off before dawn with 6 measures of barley. He avoids the look of impropriety, suspicion of wrongdoing, and refuses to send her home empty. Ruth returns to Naomi with both grain and the message that Boaz will not rest until the case is settled. Naomi reads the sign. This will move soon, and it will move by the book. This scene matters for anyone who wants results without wreckage. Courage does not skip process. Love does not ignore order. Boaz will not use the night to gain an advantage. He will use the day to gain witnesses. Ruth will not use emotion to force a yes. She will use trust to invite a right yes. The town will be able to support the outcome because it was handled in the open. Bring this to a Monday. You are offered a role in a family business where you already help informally. It would be easy to slide into pay without paperwork. Instead, you ask for a written job description, a clear conflict of interest check, and a board review. You also ask the owner to notify the current team before any title change. You slow the calendar to protect unity. You protect your name and theirs. You make it easy for people to bless the decision later because you handled it cleanly now. Here is the turn. God often opens good doors in ordinary places. Therefore, we honor God by walking through them with order, truth, and public clarity. That is how kindness grows strong instead of soft. Reflection. Where do you need to slow a good opportunity long enough to add order, witnesses, and protection for every name involved? Night tempts shortcuts. Boaz chooses guardrails. He has every reason to rush. A brave woman lies at his feet asking for lawful protection. He does not touch the request until morning light can hold it. He thinks about Ruth's future name, not his current feelings. He thinks about the town's trust, not the thrill of a secret. Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor, Ruth 3:14 short. This is not shame. This is shield. He protects her from whispers that could follow her for years. Watch the steps. First, Boaz speaks blessing over Ruth. He honors her motive and her dignity. Second, he sets a time boundary. The matter will be handled at the gate with witnesses. Third, he adds provision without strings, 6 measures of barley sent with Ruth to Naomi. Grain cannot buy silence here. Grain says, I will carry weight before I ask the town to carry mine. Fourth, he limits visibility. Ruth leaves before dawn so her presence is not misread by idle eyes. Boundaries shape truth so it travels clean. Integrity is not only about what you refuse to do, it is about what you arrange so others do not stumble. Small towns remember rumors longer than facts. Harvest camps in any age are loud with talk. Boaz will not feed that talk. He holds the line for both of them. He is strong enough to wait for daylight and strong enough to be seen doing the right thing. Ruth does her part too. She follows Naomi's plan without adding pressure, tears, or drama. Courage brought her to the floor. Humility takes her home with a promise. She trusts that a righteous man will move fast in the morning. Naomi reads the moment and says, Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. Waiting here is not passive. It is disciplined hope with evidence in hand. Bring this to a Monday. You lead a small team and a junior staffer messages you late with a brilliant idea tied to a client's confidential file. It would be easy to text the client right away to look responsive. Instead, you write down the idea, mark the source, and set a morning meeting with the account lead and legal. You tell the junior, great work. Now let's protect you and the client by doing this in the light. You copy the right people on the email. You put the document in the correct folder. You close Slack. You teach the team that speed and order can live together. The client sees a clean rollout at 10 a.m. with the right names in the room. Trust grows. Here is the turn. Boundaries are not walls that keep love out. Boundaries are rails that carry love to the right address. Therefore, integrity at midnight becomes authority at noon. People follow those who can handle strong feelings with strong guardrails. Ruth's future will not depend on who believes her version of last night. It will rest on a public record built by a careful man and a courageous woman. One more angle for those who wrestle with appearances. Avoiding the look of wrongdoing is not hypocrisy. It is responsibility. Hypocrisy hides sin. Responsibility prevents false stories. That is why Scripture keeps pointing us to what is honorable in the sight of all. This means actions that can withstand public view. Boaz lives that way. Ruth benefits from it. The town will be able to bless the outcome without a knot in the stomach. Reflection. What one boundary could you set today that would protect someone's name tomorrow and make it easier to celebrate the result in the light? Morning breaks, and Boaz walks to the city gate. In their towns, the gate is not just an entrance. It is the courthouse, public place where elders witness legal deals. Elders sit, people pass. News moves fast. Boaz takes his seat, calls the nearer redeemer to sit, and gathers 10 elders as witnesses. He is not staging a show. He is building a record. When lives and property shift hands, memories get fuzzy. Paper was not always the tool. People were. Boaz makes sure the right people hear the right words in the right order. He starts with the land. Naomi is selling the field that belonged to Elimelech. If you will redeem it, buy it back to keep it in the clan. Do it now. The nearer man answers quickly. Yes, I will redeem it. Land is an asset. A field can grow profit. No marriage talk yet. This sounds like a clean investment and a public good. Then, Boaz adds the second half. On the day you buy the field, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance. This means any son will carry the deceased man's line. The man pauses and runs the numbers out loud. I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Ruth 4:6, short. Translation. Combining the purchase with the duty to provide heirs could split his estate and risk his family's share. Therefore he declines. This is not villainy. It is caution. But here the difference between caution and courage shapes a future. The nearer redeemer steps back to protect his house. Boaz steps forward to restore Naomi's and honor Ruth. Both act within the law. Only one acts with hesed, steadfast kindness, inside covenant, that pays a cost. The custom at that time was simple. To confirm the transfer of the right to redeem, a man removed his sandal and handed it to the other, a visible token of agreement. In front of the elders and the crowd, the nearer redeemer hands over his sandal. The right to redeem passes to Boaz. Boaz speaks for everyone to hear. You are witnesses this day that I have bought from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech. Also Ruth the Moabite. I have acquired to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead Ruth. 4:9-10, short. He states the purpose: to keep a name alive in Israel, to keep property in its family, to give the dead a legacy among his brothers. Law and love stand side by side. Redemption is not just a feeling of rescue. Redemption is a legal recovery of people and property for their rightful place. The town responds with blessing. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who built up the house of Israel. May your house be like the house of Perez. These are not empty words. They are prayers that tie a small town moment to the nation's story. The crowd names Ruth among Israel's mothers. The outsider is now honored inside the line. Bring this to a Monday. You sit down with your siblings to decide what to do with your grandmother's small home after she passes. One option grows your personal net worth. Another option keeps the house available for a cousin who just aged out of foster care and needs a stable start. You could take the first path with a clean conscience. You choose the second with a generous heart. You call a lawyer, draw up documents, and set terms that protect the cousin and the property. You gather 2 aunts and a neighbor to hear the plan and sign as witnesses. Later, no one argues about who promised what. Your generosity has paperwork and people attached. Notice what Boaz models. He refuses the shortcut of private agreements. He resists the fog of half-truths. He names costs out loud. He protects the vulnerable by declaring purpose, raise up the name of the dead. That phrase guards against quiet erasure. Names matter to God. Lines matter to God. Land mattered in their covenant-binding promise between God and Israel. In our world, the exact structures differ, but the principle holds. When you can use your strength to protect someone's name, place, or future, do it in ways that can be checked and blessed. Here is the turn. The nearer Redeemer feared a smaller inheritance if he acted. Boaz chose a larger legacy by acting. The first kept numbers tidy. The second kept people whole. One looked at cost today. The other looked at names tomorrow. God writes the bigger story through those who can see past the balance sheet to the family tree. Reflection. Where could you add witnesses and clear terms to your next act of help so the blessing survives memory and keeps a name alive? A promise is personal. Proof is public. The gate crowd watches the nearer Redeemer give Boaz his sandal. This small act does big work. It signals in front of witnesses that the right to redeem has moved. No rumor. No, he said, she said. A visible token and many ears make the future sturdy. Then Boaz speaks so every name is safe. You are witnesses this day. Ruth 4:9, short. He lists the land, the family, and Ruth's place in his home. He states the purpose: keep the dead man's name standing in Israel. Redemption here is not just rescue from poverty. It is restoration to place, people, and story. Why a sandal? In that world, land and walking belong together. The sandal marks the right to tread and to claim, public signal of transfer. Boaz receives it and turns a private ability into a public duty. He does not hide his intent. He binds it to the town. Therefore, no one can quietly push Ruth aside later. No one can shrink Naomi's portion after memories fade. The record lives in witnesses. The people answer with blessing that reaches back to Rachel and Leah and forward to Perez. They tie this moment to the wider family of Israel. The outsider from Moab is now covered by promises bigger than one field. That is how covenant kindness works. It pulls small homes under strong roofs. Bring this to a Monday. You decide to fund a scholarship for a student from your neighborhood. You could send cash each semester and hope it lands right. Instead, you meet at the community center. You write simple terms, amount, duration, grade, expectations, mentoring, check-ins. You invite 2 trusted neighbors and the school counselor to witness. You sign. The student signs. Copies go to everyone. Now the help has bones. If leadership changes or you move, the structure remains. The student knows what to expect. The community knows how to support. Here is the turn. Many good intentions die in the fog of privacy. Boaz takes kindness into daylight and gives it handles. Therefore, the town can carry it with him. Public clarity does not cheapen love. It protects love from drift. It turns a warm feeling into a durable promise. If you carry influence, learn from the sandal. Build your help with clear tokens, written terms, and named witnesses. If you carry need, look for helpers who welcome daylight. That is how legacies survive and names stay whole. Reflection. What promise in your life needs to move from a private intention to a public witnessed commitment this week? And who should be in the room? The story circles back to Naomi, the woman who renamed herself Mara, bitter. Loss had pressed the color out of her words. Now the town's women gather and their voices rise like a lift under her arms. Ruth marries Boaz. A son is born. The neighbors say, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day, without a redeemer. Ruth, chapter 14. Short. Listen to the focus. They do not start with Ruth's beauty or Boaz's wealth. They start with God's steady hand and a grandson placed in Naomi's lap. Notice how restoration works here. It does not rewind grief. It builds new joy in the same town that watched her cry. The women become a chorus of truth. They name Ruth as better to Naomi than 7 sons, a high compliment in their world. Sons were expected to secure family strength. They bless God for a child who will restore your life and nourish you in your old age. Restoration is not a slogan. It is diapers, feedings, and a crib in the corner. It is a rocking chair where an older woman smiles because a future sits heavy and warm on her knees. Naomi participates. She takes the child and becomes his nurse caregiver. The text slows down to show arms, not speeches. That detail matters. Bitterness began in a body that felt empty. Blessing returns to a body that holds a boy named Obed. God has not ignored her pain. God has woven it into a new fabric. The neighbors even say, "A son has been born to Naomi." The line is Ruth's. The hope touches Naomi. That is how community carries redemption. The joy spreads along family lines without erasing who did what. Bring this to a Monday. Think about a widow on your block who lost her son last year. Holidays went quiet. This spring, her daughter brings home a newborn. Neighbors set up a meal train and a rotating grandma rest hour so the older woman can hold the baby 3 afternoons a week. She hums the same song she once sang in a different kitchen. The ache does not vanish. It changes shape. The living room fills with small sounds and steady visits. People keep showing up. A story that started with casseroles after a funeral now continues with casseroles after a birth. The same hands carry sorrow and joy. Here is the turn. God often restores by giving new assignments in the same place you were hurt. Naomi left full and returned empty. She now becomes full by serving the child who will carry the family name. The town that heard her bitter name now speaks blessing over her. Therefore, redemption is not only personal, it is communal. It is not only spiritual, it is social and practical. God lifts the lonely by stitching them back into a people. If you are in a season where you can only say, "Mara, do not rush your mouth," God can handle that word. Stay near God's people. Keep your place in the story. The next chapter may arrive in a form that needs your arms more than your answers. The Bible gives one short line to mark the turn. A son has been born to Naomi. Ruth 4:17 short. That is how Scripture measures hope, by who is held, who is named, and who shows up. Reflection. Who in your town needs the steady chorus of neighbors right now? And what is one small way you can put blessing back into their arms this week? The camera pulls back to show the line that flows from this small town choice. The women name the boy Obed. The text adds a simple chain. Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered David. Ruth 4:17 short. That is the future king of Israel. Later, the New Testament traces the line from David to Jesus. The Bible does not shout here. It lists names. It lets you do the math. A field policy, a meal at noon, a legal act at the gate, and a wedding in Bethlehem stack into a royal line, and generations later, into the birth of the Messiah, God's anointed king. Why tell it this way? Because most of your obedience will not feel epic. It will feel like one more small right thing inside the limits you have. Ruth's vow looked like personal loyalty. Boaz's care looked like workplace safety and public clarity. Naomi's guidance looked like wise timing. None of them could see David from where they stood. None of them could see Christmas from where they sat. They could see the next step. They took it. Therefore, God stitched their steps into a story that outlived them. The genealogy also corrects a common fear. Some think their past disqualifies their future. Ruth is a Moabite. That label carried social weight. Yet her name goes into Israel's family book. Boaz descends from Salmon and Rahab. If you follow Matthew's record, another outsider pulled into grace. God does not hide these details. He prints them. He wants you to know that His plans can hold people with complicated stories. Your history explains you. It does not have to imprison you. Genealogies. Family lists can feel dry until you realize what they measure. They measure faithfulness across time. They show that God uses normal people who keep normal promises. They show that households matter, workplaces matter, and city gates matter. The list at the end of Ruth is not an appendix. It is the point. Names endure when kindness becomes law, when love gets witnesses, and when courage walks across borders. Bring this to a Monday. Think about a mentor who recommended you for your first steady job. The paycheck led to an apartment. The apartment led to a stable routine. The routine led to meeting someone at a volunteer event. Years later, there is a child in a car seat and a habit of dropping off groceries for a neighbor. If you draw the line backwards, you reach a short email your mentor sent on a Tuesday. It did not feel epic to them. It changed your map. Your choices this week may sit in someone else's family story the same way. Here is the turn. You do not need to predict the whole arc to act well today. You need to ask, what is the next faithful step that protects someone's name, place, or future? Then take it in the light. Genealogies grow one decision at a time. When they are read, they sound like a list. When they are lived, they feel like a series of small and sturdy yeses. Reflection. Which next small, faithful step at home, at work, or at the gate could become part of someone else's long story if you take it today? The Bible's field runs through our streets. Ruth steps into gleaning laws. We step into city policies, HR manuals, and neighborhood rhythms. The shapes differ. The heart holds. The Lord repay you for what you have done. Ruth 2:12 short. That line fits any town where people leave margin for the vulnerable and keep promises in daylight. Let's trace 3 paths. First, workplace edges. Field edges were the unharvested margins left for the poor and the foreigner. Lev 19, 9-10. Translate that into teams and shops. Edges look like paid trial shifts for newcomers with no references. They look like posting entry roles in more than one place, so people without networks can find them. They look like zero-tolerance lines on harassment, hostile behavior that targets someone's identity, written and enforced. It is not charity to do this. It is justice made normal in policy. A manager who builds edges prevents harm before it starts and invites dignity to take root. Second, family loyalty across borders. Ruth ties her life to Naomi with a vow. Many of you carry something similar. Money orders sent home, spare rooms opened to in-laws, rides to clinics. You do not owe unlimited rescue. You can still practice ordered care. Set a monthly amount you really can keep. Write it down. Add 2 non-money supports: introductions and information. Introductions open doors. $1 can't force. Information. How to apply, who to call, what to say, removes fog that steals courage. Ruth did not bring wealth. She brought presence and action. That is within reach. Third, community pairing. New arrivals learn faster when someone stands beside them. Pairing means one steady local walks the first mile sign up for library cards, point to clinics. Ride the bus once to show the route, share the name of an honest landlord. Churches and clubs can organize this without becoming social agencies. Keep scope small. 3 meetings across 90 days. A list of 5 must-know places. A final handoff to a longer-term group. Mercy grows when it has a map. You might ask, what about limits? Boaz shows limits. He sets boundaries that protect Ruth. Then he adds provision within those boundaries. Boundaries are how help stays clean and sustainable. Write yours. When will you answer calls? What can you offer this month? Who else needs to be in the room before you commit? Public clarity prevents private burnout and private confusion. You might ask, what about motives? Ruth's motive is love wrapped in loyalty. Boaz's motive is covenant kindness, hesed steadfast care inside a promise. Neither turns the other into a project. They act for God's sake and the family's good. In our day, keep the person in view, not your post. Tell fewer stories about your help. Tell more stories that lift the neighbor's name. Let me ground this with a simple plan you can start this week. Pick one policy presence or pairing. If you lead, update one policy, so edges are real. If you are a neighbor, offer presents, 2 hot meals, 1 referral, and a text on Friday. If you belong to a group, launch a pairing pilot with 3 volunteers and 3 families. Keep records the way Boaz kept witnesses. Celebrate in public when a door opens. Protection first, then provision, then praise. None of this requires a platform. It needs a field and a few faithful people. That is how God turned a border crosser and a landowner into ancestors of a king. Kindness went local. Law and love walked together. The town could see it and say amen. Reflection. Which one will you start this week? Write one edge into a policy. Give steady presence to one household, or pair up to walk a newcomer's first mile. And what is your first concrete step? Kindness that redeems is not a mood. It is a set of repeatable steps. You do not need a title, a budget line, or a crowd. You need a small plan and a steady calendar. Think of Ruth bending in the rows. Think of Boaz speaking clear words to his crew. Think of Naomi reading the signs with hope. None of them waited for perfect conditions. They moved with what they had. Do not grow weary of doing good, Gal 6:9 short. That one line is fuel for a week like this. Here are 7 acts you can practice now. 1. Leave edges. Build margin you will not touch. In money, set a small monthly amount for quiet help. In time, block 1 hour a week for people work. Name it on your calendar as edges. This means you expect interruption, and you treat it as part of faith, not an enemy of efficiency. Monday example. You keep a grocery card in your wallet and a 30-minute slot on Thursday for a check-in call. 2. Guard the vulnerable. Write one sentence that makes safety non-negotiable in your space. Say it out loud to your team or family, and repeat it when needed. Then assign one person to watch the edges like Boaz's overseer, shift lead, who watches both work and behavior. This gives kindness a defender. Monday example in your study group you set, no jokes about accents or backgrounds. We honor every story, and you ask one trusted friend to step in fast if the line is crossed. 3. Put an extra plate on the table. Hospitality turns strangers into neighbors. Pick one date this month to share a simple meal with someone on the margins. An intern, a widow, a newcomer, a student far from home. Do not overthink menu or decor. Warm food and warm notice heal in quiet ways. Monday example, pasta salad ice cream. Invite sent by text 2 days ahead. End by 8:30, so workdays survive. 4. Shoulder a load. Redemption is felt in pounds, not promises. Ask, what would lift weight for you this week? Then do that thing. Bags of groceries. A ride to the clinic. Childcare so a parent can sit at the DMV government office for licenses. Keep the gift specific and on a clock. Monday example, I can watch the kids 4 to 6 p.m. Wednesday so you can make that appointment. 5. Make an introduction. Open a door with your name. Many needs are not money problems. They are access problems. Write one email that connects a neighbor to a trustworthy person, a hiring manager, a landlord, a counselor, a coach. Keep it short, kind, and clear on the ask. Monday example. Hi Sam. Meet Maria. She's reliable and ready for weekend shifts. Could she try a Saturday? 6. Tell the truth about someone's worth. Boaz names Ruth's courage in public. Do the same. Praise character, not just outcomes. Say it where others can hear, not to perform, but to protect. Words can build a fence around a person's dignity. Monday example in a team meeting. You say, Jamal's persistence got that report over the line. He stayed late and stayed kind. 7. Follow up. Hesed is loyal, not loud. Put a reminder to check back in 3 days. Ask what changed, what still hurts, and what next small step would help. People breathe easier when they know they are not a one-time project. Monday example. How did Tuesday go? Want me to look over that form before you submit? You may feel the pull to do all 7 at once. Do not. Choose 2 for this week. Schedule them. Tell one partner so you keep your word. The goal is not a spike of activity. The goal is a rhythm that survives busy seasons. Ruth did not clear a field in a day. She stayed in the row she had. Boaz did not rewrite the law. He obeyed it and raised its ceiling with specific care. Naomi did not demand a miracle. She read providence and coached next steps. You can copy that pattern where you live. Let's talk about limits with love. Your edges are edges, not the whole field. Boundaries keep kindness from curdling into resentment. State up front what you can offer and when. Keep your family in the light. Involve witnesses when money, housing, or jobs are in view. This makes help survivable and stories clean. Let's talk about motive. Do these acts for God's sake and the neighbor's good, not for your platform, not for likes. Keep stories private unless the person wants them told, and even then, center their name, not yours. The harvest is God's. We are workers who get to share in the joy. Let's talk about pace. Galatians warns against weariness because good work has a season. Some seeds sprout in a week, some in a year. Keep sowing. Keep simple. Keep public when it protects, and keep quiet when it preserves dignity. The town in Ruth could see what was happening and say, Amen. Aim for that mix. Start with what you can carry today. Carry it in daylight. Let others see enough to join you. That is how kindness becomes culture. Reflection. Which 2 acts will you schedule right now with a date and time? And who will you tell so you keep your word? Let's clear up the scene that most people whisper about. A threshing floor is a flat, open place where workers beat grain free. During harvest, crews sleep nearby to guard the pile. It is public. It is busy. It is not a secret bedroom. Naomi sends Ruth there because the season is ending, and decisions must be made in days, not months. The act of uncovering Boaz's feet is a humble sign. It asks for covering, legal protection, marriage not a private shortcut. Ruth uses clear words to match the sign. Spread your garment over your servant. Ruth 3:9. Short. That is a request, not a trick. Boaz responds with honor. He calls Ruth a worthy woman, promises action, and names the nearer redeemer who must be asked first. He protects her from talk by sending her away before dawn and handling the matter at the gate with witnesses. Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Ruth 3:14. Short. This is not shame. This is shield. The proof is what happens next. In daylight, Boaz gathers elders, states the case, and secures a clean yes. Why did they not just meet in the living room? Because in that world, a woman could be misread if she pushed into private male space at night, and a man could be accused if he made private promises without elders. The floor is public enough to be safe, quiet enough to speak, and close to the field, where Boaz is on duty. The plan honors courage, order, and reputation at the same time. Was there anything improper? The text points the other way. Ruth's words are direct and lawful. Boaz's answer slows desire to match God's order. The 6 measures of grain sent home are provision, not payment. The next morning confirms the intent. If scandal were the point, there would be no city gate, no sandal, no chorus of blessing. The story stands up under witnesses. Bring this to a Monday. You need a serious talk about a future partnership. You choose a setting that is both safe and appropriate. A glass-walled conference room at noon, with a colleague nearby, not a late-night coffee alone. You use clear words. You write next steps. You set a meeting with the board to formalize. You protect every name in the process. You do not ask people to trust your private memory later. You build a record now. If you carry questions about ancient customs, let this be your anchor. Watch what the text shows in daylight. The next chapter is the test. The gate scene proves that the night was clean. Ruth's reputation rises. Boaz's integrity holds. Naomi's hope grows. The town blesses what it sees because it was handled in the open. Reflection. What rumor or half-understood story in your world needs a calm public explanation, and what simple step could you take this week to bring it into the light? Redemption here is not a solo song. It is a 3-part harmony that starts in pain and ends in a community blessing. First, Naomi. She leaves full and returns empty. She renames herself Mara because that is how grief feels in the mouth. She does not get a time machine. She gets a new assignment in the same town that watched her cry. She holds Obed. She nurses him. The women say, "The Lord has not left you this day without a redeemer," Ruth 4:14, short. The line runs through Ruth and Boaz, but the comfort lands in Naomi's lap. That is how God honors the long ache of the older generation, by giving them a future to serve. Second Ruth. She starts the book as a foreign widow with 2 strikes against her outsider status and poverty. She chooses loyalty over self-protection. She works within God's law. She acts with clear words at the floor and steady effort in the field. The town calls her a worthy woman. She becomes a wife, a mother, and an honored ancestor. Her journey teaches this simple rule: courage plus order builds trust. She does not demand a spotlight. The story gives her one because she keeps her vows in public. Third, Boaz. He begins as an able man, wealth land crew. Many stop there. He moves from able to accountable. He builds safety lines in his field. He names Ruth's value out loud. He shoulders cost at the gate. He shows that manhood is more than strength. It is strength used to protect names, not polish reputations. He does not need whispers to confirm his goodness. He wants witnesses. That is why his legacy outlives him. Put the 3 arcs together, and you see God's pattern. He restores the bitter by giving them someone to bless. He lifts the outsider by writing them into the family book. He dignifies the powerful by giving them a chance to spend strength for others. None of this looks flashy as it happens. It looks like steady kindness, clear law, and neighbors who stay. Bring this to a Monday. Picture a small church on the edge of a city. A retired teacher. Naomi lost her husband last year. A young immigrant mom, Ruth, sits 2 rows back with a toddler and a resume that keeps getting ignored. A business owner, Boaz, runs a shop 3 blocks away. The church starts a simple pairing. The owner posts a trial shift policy and trains staff on safety and respect. The teacher offers 2 afternoons a week of childcare so the mom can interview and take ESL classes. The mom shows steady effort and clear communication. 6 months later, the shop has a reliable hire. The child has a neighbor grandma, and the teacher has a schedule full of purpose. No miracle headlines. Just 3 journeys braided into one story you can point to. Here is the turn that brings all this home. Redemption spreads when people accept the role available to them today. You may be Naomi, tired but needed. You may be Ruth, new and brave. You may be Boaz, resourced and responsible. Ask which you are this season. Then take the next step in the light. The town will have something to bless because you chose to act where you stand. Reflection. Which role do you recognize right now? Naomi, Ruth, or Boaz? And what is the next small step you will take this week to live that role with steadiness and daylight? Here is the story in one line each. Ruth keeps a vow and works inside God's ways. Boaz turns ability into accountability with safety margin and public proof. Naomi stays with God's people long enough to hold new life in the same town that held her grief. Therefore, a family heals, a name stands, and a future king's line moves forward through small acts in daylight. He has shown you what is good. Mike 6:8 short. Take 3 steps this week. First, pick one person who needs safety. Write one sentence you will say to protect them in your space. Say it out loud to the team or family on a set day. Name one person who will help enforce it. Second, add one edge to your calendar or budget. Block 1 hour or set one small amount that will not be touched. Use it for a meal, a ride, or a bill. Put a date next to it so it happens. Third, make one promise public. If you plan to help with housing, a referral, or tuition, invite one witness. Write the terms and send copies. Turn intention into proof others can carry with you. Keep it simple. Keep it steady. Check back in 3 days with a short text. How did it go? What is the next small step? This is how kindness becomes culture, and how ordinary weeks join God's long plan. If this helped you, share it with one friend who needs hope for a hard week. Drop one story below where a small act changed a home or a job. Subscribe so you do not miss next week's walk through another moment where courage meets order and lives change. Reflection. Which single step will you do first? Safety line, edge in the budget, or public promise? And what day will you finish it?